Let's bring in our panel. Elizabeth McDonald is here, host of the Evening Edit on Fox Business, and Grover Norquist, Americans for Tax Reform president. All right, I'm super pumped to have you both. Liz, I'm going to start with you first. You have been covering the IRS for quite some time. I mean, as long as I've known you, and that's been a while. So is it possible this was just a coincidence, as some are suggesting?
It's abnormal. It doesn't seem like a coincidence at all. And I've testified twice for Congress about IRS abuses and IRS reform. The same day Matt Taibbi is testifying about civil liberty violations, about government censorship coming from every corner of the government. This is the Twitter Files journalist. The same day, an IRS agent shows up at his New Jersey house over a 4-year-old tax issue. Sandra, it's usually they would send you a letter and they would meet with you if it was over a fraud issue, not over, identity theft. So Treasury Secretary Yellen today testified that she hadn't heard about this, that she will look into it. And she admitted that, it's usually they show up for fraud, but they let you know ahead of time. What's really important is the IRS commissioner stand up and say something about this. Because if he's silent about it, then that's indicative that, they did it to threaten and intimidate Matt Taibbi. And I will say this. The IRS knows, sitting down with IRS workers in their offices or across the country, they know where they get their paychecks from. They know where they get their budgets from. Senate Finance approves it. The Democrat-run Senate Finance just approved 87,000 more IRS workers. So if they don't explicitly say, go do this. They pick up on dog whistles out of D.C. Wow. And if they feel like this will help their careers, they may show up and go rogue out of the blue. Again, we don't know the particulars. The IRS commissioner needs to step up and say this was wrong or give details about what happened.
Grover, this was Jonathan Turley on yesterday talking about this being reminiscent of the Lois Lerner case. Watch.
It reminds you of the whole Lois Lerner controversy during a prior Democratic administration, where there's a lot of concern about conservative groups who were targeted. The IRS and Lerner herself admitted that was a mistake, but then she pled the fifth and refused to testify.
So what do you think happened here, Grover?
Well, it's obvious that they sent an IRS agent out to harass a journalist. And this is a journalist, by the way, who is praised by Bernie Sanders as somebody who stood up to power. He wrote a book criticizing Trump. This is not a conservative journalist. This is a very left-of-center progressive journalist. And when he was reporting how the government was abusing Twitter and censoring people on Twitter, they send an IRS agent to his house that same day. Message received. Why should the IRS do this? Why wouldn't they do it? They didn't get punished when they destroyed the entire Tea Party movement by not allowing a single Tea Party organization to get the nonprofit status that you need to sort of exist and raise money in the country. In fact, not only did they not fire the head of the IRS for doing this, they said, you know what, here's $80 billion. That's a thank you. That's an encouragement. That's a job well done. Do more of that. And that's what the IRS is doing. More of that intimidation. The IRS union, the money they give to politics goes 98% to Democrats.
Let's not forget, more money, more people.
Bureaucracy.
This is under Biden. Yeah. We pulled the stats. $80 billion from the Inflation Reduction Act. 87,000 new full-time employees. $29 billion allotted in Biden's budget for all this. You had Darrell Issa on your show yesterday, Liz, and he talked about this being witness intimidation. Here's Issa.
It's very clear that either this was a waste of resources, which is unlikely, or more likely, this was an individual on instructions or on his own attempting to intimidate a congressional witness.
If this is the case, you can add it to the list of IRS political targets. Roll them on the screen, Liz, and you lived through this.
Yeah, and I worked with David Burnham when I was at the Wall Street Journal about IRS abuses by politicians to target their political enemies. It dates back to FDR, and we uncovered at the Wall Street Journal how JFK was using the IRS to target his political enemies, including targeting Lee Harvey Oswald, his group, Fair Play for Cuba Committee. But what Grover just said is really important, that the National Treasury Employees Union, the federal union for government workers, they dominated by Democrats. They give mostly to Democrat parties. That's who the IRS worker unionized gives too. So, it's dog whistles from how they get their paycheck, who pays it, and who runs the show for them at the IRS. Now, I'll tell you, it's a brutal bureaucracy. It's not an easy bureaucracy to work under, to be an IRS worker. You feel for them because Congress is always neurotically fiddling with the tax code, but they know where they get their pay from, and that's what to watch for.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear. I think we saw Matt Taibbi scrolling on that list of IRS political targets. We're still waiting any confirmation of that. Jim Jordan, the House Judiciary Chairman, he sent a pair of letters to try to get answers. Taibbi says he will not discuss the situation for the time being. And the IRS didn't answer a series of questions from Fox News, basic questions about how these agents show up at people's homes and whether or not Taibbi's role in Twitter files had anything to do with this. So we're awaiting any sort of confirmation of that. But the timing is certainly something. Grover, great to see you. And Liz, great to see you. Thank you for joining us. All right, John?
Got it.
All right, Sandra.